Like I walk into a traditional grocery store and I look around and I'm like, all this packaging has to go somewhere. Only 9% of plastic is ever recycled. And in fact, it shouldn't really be called recycling, it should be called downcycling, because you can only recycle some really, even the best kinds of plastic, you can only recycle them about twice before they become completely useless and end up in landfill anyway. And I just think to myself, we're literally shoving this into the earth and it's going to be a real problem one day. I mean, it's already a real problem. All of that plastic, every piece of plastic ever made still exists today, like in some form or another, either in microplastics. It's not like it can't biodegrade into nothing. It exists. So that scares the crap out of me. Even before I had children, and now I have children, it scares me even more.
From the Sarah Smiles Network, I'm Sarah Smiles, and this is the Consider the Source podcast, a show about women who've built ideas, movements, and careers by questioning the status quo and challenging norms.
My name is Verity Noble. I am one of the co-founders of Nude Foods Market, the most sustainable grocery store on earth, which sounds like a huge claim. I mean, it is a huge claim, right? But yeah. I actually am not exaggerating. I think we are the most sustainable grocery store on earth. And how do we get started? I wish I had like a really great origin story. What I always tell people, I just hate waste. I hate wasting time. I hate wasting stuff. Just like waste is kind of my worst enemy. And I've always looked around. And have you ever seen the movie WALL-E?
Yes, I recently just rewatched it.
No, I've watched it once. It's like E.T. I can never watch it again. It was too sad.
It is very sad.
It's very sad, right? And that is what goes through my head. Like I walk into a traditional grocery store and I look around and I'm like, all this packaging has to go somewhere. Only 9% of plastic is ever recycled. And in fact, it shouldn't really be called recycling, it should be called downcycling, because you can only recycle some really, even the best kinds of plastic, you can only recycle them about twice before they become completely useless and end up in landfill anyway. And I just think to myself, we're literally shoving this into the earth and it's going to be a real problem one day. I mean, it's already a real problem. All of that plastic, every piece of plastic ever made still exists today, like in some form or another, either in microplastics. It's not like it can't biodegrade into nothing. It exists. And so that scares the crap out of me. Even before I had children, and now I have children, it scares me even more. So Boulder, seemed like a really obvious place to have some kind of bulk refill store, and it didn't. So I used to schlep up to Longmont to go every couple of months and refill all my containers, and it took hours, and they really only had kind of dry goods and stuff. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. I really want to start my own thing. And then three other people in fact were thinking the same thing, and a baker knew us all and connected us and was like, you guys should do this together. And we were planning to open like a standard refill store in June of 2020, and obviously something big happened around that time. And we were like, shall we wait this out and start it once this blows over? And luckily we didn't do that. We in fact decided to pivot and do a delivery service. And that is where we came up with the idea of the reusable, refillable glass jars, and the whole concept of Nude Foods was started. So yeah, that's when Nude Foods was started in this format. What we wanted to do was create something that was easy for mainstream shoppers to transition to. Because, there are bulk refill stores all over the place where you can take your own containers and refill your bags and whatever else. But that takes a lot of time and work. And there are a lot of people who love doing that, and that's awesome. But most people don't have the time or the energy or just the commitment to the cause, I guess, because they have 3,000 other things going on in their lives. that might be, more important than that. And so we wanted to make it as easy as a mainstream grocery store where you could come in. It was a one-stop shop where you had everything from, your fresh bread every day to meals to cleaning products to produce to, meat. Even now we have meat. All these different things under one roof that were as zero waste and sustainable as possible, and B, were deeply researched. So you could come in and know, instead, I used to go to Whole Foods and read all the labels because they're all hiding stuff that you don't want in your body. And the packaging is all shouting at you and telling you how wonderful it is. But you have to read things to see whether it really was something that you wanted to put in your body. And we have done all this research to make sure that there are only things that we would be willing to put in our own bodies and feed to our own children on our shelves so that people can come in and trust us.
And talk to me more about that, because I feel like as a consumer, I'm hyper aware of what I am putting into my body. And I feel like not many people really take the time to take a look at the label of what they're consuming. And it becomes this game of, I really have to look at every single thing that I'm buying. And how do I know who to trust? And so while you're doing this research, how do you know the things that you are buying are sustainable or are what they say they are or don't include these ingredients or are ethically sourced? Like, how are you doing that diligence?
Well, to start with, 42% of our products are local, which makes the diligence much easier. We can actually go and visit the farms where the animals are raised. We can visit the farmers who are growing our produce. We can see what methods they're using, make sure that many of them are not certified organic because it's a really expensive process. But we can go and check that they are actually farming in an organic and usually regenerative manner. So visiting is a lot of it. And then the rest of it is talking to the suppliers and finding out, where did it originally come from? How's it been treated? All this other things. I'm sure there are moments when no, actually, I don't. I was going to say I'm sure that things fall through the cracks, but I think they don't. We're really diligent on it. That's, beyond zero waste, that's our second most important thing. We want the products to not only be good for the planet, but also good for people.
Right. And that doesn't just start from having this immense network of farmers or people that are locally growing things. How do you find these local producers? Because, obviously you can go to farmers markets and you can meet some of the farmers that are local to the Denver area, to the Boulder area, but that really is only a small piece of the pie in terms of how you're able to stock your store. Because what if something is out, or what if one farmer isn't able to supply a certain amount of something? Then how did you, first of all, create that network? And then second of all, how do you make sure that your store is stocked with all of the things that people come in and expect?
Yeah, so the network was actually pretty easy to create because one of my co-founders owns commercial kitchens here in Boulder. And so a lot of the kind of smaller makers would rent space in his kitchen. So we had, and that's actually where our first kind of warehouse was, next to one of his kitchens. So it was really easy to hit up all those people. And then there's Naturally Network, which is this organization for food producers here in Colorado. And we met a lot of people through that. And then Rachel was very involved in the food system here in Boulder, so she knew a lot of the farmers. So it was really our personal networks that initially got us in touch with people. And now we have people banging down our door because they want to be stocked in Nude Foods. So we have a vendor application, we review it quarterly, we have a list as long as my arm of people who are just trying to get in. So now it's a lot easier. We're very clear, like, if you fulfill these criteria, then you can apply. But if you don't, then, don't worry about kind of taking the time to fill in an application form. But one of the things that we're really proud of is that we help a lot of kind of first-time producers who are doing really interesting things. we're often their first retail location, and we hold their hands through, setting it up and what they should expect. And then many of them go on to be stocked at other places like Whole Foods and natural grocers.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And then I guess my next question is, obviously there is huge strife with the farming community based on tariffs, and you can see there's a huge push for government bailouts for farmers. And that then obviously relates to how things are priced. And it then becomes, okay, how do we make these prices still affordable? How do we make this so that we're not necessarily affecting the consumer all that greatly, but still able to then receive profit and revenue and continue to sustain and build upon this business?
I mean, produce is a really hard part of the business. We make basically no money on produce. Like, we want the freshest, best produce, and we want to keep it as affordable as possible. So, there's almost no margin for us on that. So that's how we do it. And you were asking earlier about, how do we ensure the supply chain and that we don't run out of things. Our out of stocks are actually really low. They weren't. We've worked hard to make that happen, and now I think they're sub 2%, which is above industry standard, I think. We kind of have backups to a lot of our suppliers. So if there's one who doesn't have something, we now have alternatives for almost everything. We'll have a kind of a favorite supplier, then a backup option. We do work with some distributors, which is awesome. Like, most grocery stores just work with 2 or 3 distributors and get all their products from them, which would be so easy. But we have a couple of distributors, but mostly we work directly with the vendor. And that means that instead of 2 or 3 relationships, we have over 100 relationships, which is complicated, but really important for the food system.
Yeah. And I feel like the other important aspect when you think about your own health and what you're putting into your body, I remember I went to this spiritual health guided class that was talking about making sure and emphasizing the importance of eating within your season. And I think that is such an ideology that really isn't put out into what we consume into our bodies on a day-to-day basis. And my question to you, because I'm assuming that based on what crop rotation is and what season it is, your stock is going to vary. And what does that mean to eat within your season, and how do you see importance within that statement?
I do see it as really important to eat seasonally, because that means we can have local produce. We're not having tons of food miles. We used to really only stock seasonal produce. We have compromised on that because there are certain, there's this fine line we walk, right? We have our really strict values on one side, and we have the need to provide a convenient, seamless grocery store that makes money on the other side. And so we have had to compromise a bit and bring in things that people feel they can't live without. So, bananas and berries. In fact, one of our advisors, who was Whole Foods for 30 years, he said one of the biggest kind of contributors to success at their stores was whether they had berries in stock. So we now have berries, and these are in plastic clamshells because that's the only option. But we have had to compromise a little on just a couple of things to make it a one-stop shop, because otherwise people were going somewhere else to get those anyway, and then they were buying lots of other packaged items while they were there. So yes, for the greater good, we've taken on a few things that are not seasonal and are in plastic.
Right. And that brings me back to what you had initially said when we first began the podcast of you're the most sustainable zero waste grocery store that exists. Mm-hmm. And with that claim, how do you compare that to other stores that are claiming their sustainability? And when you talk about things that you make compromises on, how do you see other health food stores, and how do you see other sustainable stores missing that extra mark that puts you that much further ahead in terms of the claim of being the most sustainable grocery store?
I think because there aren't many zero waste grocery stores around. There are bulk stores which have, the rice, the beans, the flours, all spices, all those things, right? Mm-hmm. But there aren't really many true grocery stores that people can do 100% of their weekly shop at. And that's why I think we claim to be the most sustainable grocery store on earth, because really there aren't many other options out there who are true grocery stores.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like with the expansion of grocery store and with what people's expectations are and needing to make compromises, how do you see that coming forward in terms of, again, we are facing a lot of tariffs and farmers are having to call for these bailouts, and we're only going to see the price of food get more and more expensive. And with the demand of what people are able to afford versus what people want, because like me, I'm 26 years old. I would love to be able to afford to live a lifestyle that allows for me to live in a zero waste fashion. However, to me, it seems like if you want to shop organic, if you want to shop zero waste, it comes with this almost luxury price tag that with a potential inbound recession, with the tariffs on food. I went to Sprouts the other day, eggs were $15. What? And that to me, how do you mitigate that? How do you allow for your values as a brand, as a company, as a grocery store to stay strong during those times?
Well, first up, eggs aren't $15, which is good. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I saw it. My jaw dropped. I was like,
Yeah, I
what?
bet. No, nowhere near. But yeah, often good quality food is more expensive. But it's also a misconception that we are more expensive. So I wish I had a jar here to show you right now, but when you go to the grocery store, if you look at packets, they're actually, say you got a packet this big, it's actually usually only filled up to here. Whereas when you get one of our jars, it's absolutely packed. So you're getting way more for your money to start with. So I think if people come in and like, oh, that's expensive, they're not realizing they're getting like 3 times as much as at another grocery store. Secondly, people can fill their own stuff, which is way cheaper because it doesn't have the labor of us filling it. And thirdly, our business model will actually eventually allow for us to be more cost effective. I mean, we're already on a par with other grocery stores price-wise. We're not more expensive other than for products which are more expensive everywhere. But our business model, once we get to a certain volume, we'll be able to buy, and we're already doing this a bit, actually buy pallets of items, which then brings the price way down. And because we don't have the middleman, the distributor, and all these other people on the supply chain, we're getting it direct from the producer, we can cut out a ton of people like taking their cut of the food. And that way we can keep prices really reasonable and even at some point bring them down.
And I share the same sentiment with you of anytime I walk into a grocery store, specifically Costco, I get physically ill and unwell and chills of just seeing the amount of packaging that goes into every individualized product. And even when you have an individualized product and you open that product,
and it's got little wrapped things inside it, and you're like, I thought I was doing a good thing by getting a bulk, and it's not.
Yes. And it, as the consumer, it is such a horrible feeling. And I had a sustainable consultant on in a previous podcast, and she mentioned that the producers put the burden of recycling, and I say recycling in quotations because recycling means a lot of things to a lot of different people and realistically should be the lowest priority on the reduce, reuse, recycle pyramid or hierarchy, if you will, because it is a hierarchy. It is not all three equal, right? So with that being said, and with looking at how you receive items in a grocery store and in a zero waste grocery store, obviously you have to receive items in a specific capacity. Like if you were to receive grains, don't just get them handed to you in your hands. What does that bulk delivery system look like? And how is that then transported to you in terms of how you receive goods?
Yeah, great question. And actually, some people have asked us, do we just go to Costco and then repackage it? And we're like, no. So it comes to us in a variety of different ways. Pretty much all the local stuff comes to us in reusable bins. So we have like big basically giant Tupperware and things like our bread, or we provide jars to the local suppliers and they put their products directly into the jars. So that way, that is completely no packaging coming to us. Then we get as much as we can in recyclable packaging. So, paper bags, boxes, etc., etc. And then obviously there are lots of things that can't come to us in recyclable packaging. So what we then decide is we get the most sustainable or recyclable packaging we can. But, if you get like let's say a plastic bag of pumpkin seeds that's kind of a foot squared, let's say, think about how many individual bags that would make up, and it's only on the outside. So we're still cutting the waste by, I would say, 90%. And then we're also disposing of it. We take it to the right recycling place. And while recycling is not our number one thing, we do have to recycle some things. But our hope is that as we grow and get more power, we can put way more pressure on our suppliers to get it to us in different ways.
Right. And I love that, because that then segues into, how do you see growth in this? Because I love the idea of having everybody move into this bulk system where you are able to have a zero waste society. And I love the concepts of Lush, the bath body beauty company.
Yeah.
They kind of, in my generation, allowed for us to experience what that looks like in terms of zero packaging. Everything is just as it is. You go in, you buy it, and that product right there is in your hands. You don't have waste to consider. And I would love for us to get to a place where that looks. And obviously that can start with food, but then that progresses into other avenues. And talk to me more about how you see the expansion of this occurring and how we then put force. And when I say we, I mean the consumer puts the emphasis back on to the producer of how do we make this the norm? Because that's ultimately the biggest issue of as American people, we're busy. We have a lot of things going on. We take the path of least resistance and the easiest path. And to make zero waste the easiest path would be the ideal scenario. But that comes at the expense of the producer. So I love what you had mentioned about putting the onus back onto your shippers, your producers. And I feel like that is such an important concept, and would love to hear what your ideas or what your ideal future utopian society would look like.
That's a big question. Well, I think, looking to expand Nude Foods, and the way we're going to do that is, first of all, we need more people to shop, right? The consumers are what drive change, because at the end of the day, companies are going to move to where the consumers are spending their money. So if consumers spend money on zero waste goods, then people will start to take notice. So we plan to open more stores. So another 3 probably in the next few years. Open a distribution center so that it's a kind of hub and spoke model to get all our costs down. And then there are other options to expand, like we could become a store within a store. So maybe there's like a Nude Foods within a Target or a Whole Foods or something like that. Within the next few years, we'll look to try and partner with probably a big retailer or someone like that to help us expand much quicker. I could see this going nationwide, starting with kind of the big cities who are known for being more kind of environmentally conscious, and spreading like that. But yeah, it's definitely the most complicated business you could start. So, we were recently talking to someone who's a very well-known business person. I can't share their name right now, but he was like, wow, most entrepreneurs have to be expert at one thing, like logistics or operations or whatever. And he's like, you guys have to be expert in 6 different businesses. And we're like, yep.
Right.
So it's not an easy thing to do, but we're doing it. And
yeah,
I think if there's the demand, we can keep doing it and we can keep growing. That's the key, is the demand.
And I really want to just emphasize that I think that what you have done is so noble. And I also really want to emphasize like your humility in all of this of like, oh yeah, it was just our network. We were able to just do this pretty seamlessly. When in reality, it's a lot of work behind the scenes. It's not just, oh yeah, we just had the network in our back pocket because it's at the end of the day, like I said, it is the path of least resistance that most consumers are looking to take. And to make this the norm is a huge effort to do so. And how do you think that we make this the norm? Obviously, you said of potentially putting it into stores and by just having people adopt it, but when I think of grocery shopping and when the average American thinks of shopping, they think of convenience, they think of ease. And how do you make this easy? How do you make this convenient?
I mean, I think we've made it a lot more convenient than it ever has been before. You know, at some
Definitely.
point we might change the package. At the moment it's glass, which is heavy and breakable. You know, so we're hoping that at some point there's going to be some kind of bioplastic which we can transition to, which will be much lighter and easier to kind of handle and will stack and all these other different things. So I think it's just keeping going and keeping our eye on new options to make it easy. And I think it's also making kind of the other stuff harder, you know, like
Right.
taxing people who are using tons of plastic, you know, I don't know, taxing people who have tons of trash, or it just, we need to make the negative harder and the positive easier.
100%. And with the idea of waste management and how it has come into our society of so seamlessly, so effortlessly, there was a time when it did not exist. And I think that as Americans, we just take what we have as that's what we get to accept instead of challenging norms in order to better ourselves, better society. Because, like you mentioned earlier, Wall-E is a scary movie. It is a horrifying movie that is slowly and gradually becoming our reality year by year. And I see this in Denver is one of the like most outdoorsy cities that there is. And I run frequently. I'm a runner. I see on the trails that I run litter frequently, frequently. And that to me is so gut wrenching. And when I look at a global perspective, when I travel, I look at these things as well. And what I notice in other countries is the lack of public waste receptacles. There are not many public waste receptacles when you travel to Europe and you look on the streets. There is not much public waste receptacles because they are not emphasizing single use items.
Oh, yeah.
And that is not what their culture is built on, where that is very much so what our culture is built on in terms of single use. And obviously, there is kind of creating a change based on American consumerism and that kind of finding its way overseas, and you're starting to see a little bit more litter or single use as you're traveling. But that's not what it initially was principled on. And to me, I would love to see zero waste become a realistic thing, but you can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. What do you think the most realistic steps are for a person that's really interested in, okay, I want to make a difference. I want to become zero waste. I want to make this impact. Where do you think that starts? How do you think you can make a realistic difference yourself?
Um, there's loads of small steps people can make to actually make a huge difference. I have a little fun thing I do every New Year. It's called the 21 Days Zero Waste Challenge. And it's 21 days of bite-size kind of actions that you can take. But things like if you don't remember to take your reusable a coffee cup to the coffee shop, don't get a coffee to go. Just either drink your coffee in or don't get a coffee. You'll remember next time if you give yourself a little kind of, if you go without. I also have a go bag. So I have a little bag in my car and on my bike, which is a collapsible Tupperware, some silverware. And if I go out for dinner, then I always take my Tupperware with me in my bag. And when there's leftovers, instead of getting a to-go box, which mightn't look nice in cardboard, but is actually lined with plastic every time to make it waterproof, um, then I can just put it in my Tupperware and use it another time. Um, choosing to bike rather than drive, that makes a huge difference. And, we have we have great weather for biking in Colorado. I biked for 15 years in London. And actually that was bearable. So we can definitely do it here in Colorado. Um, what else is really easy things? Refusing stuff I find is very effective. Like here, everyone automatically brings you a straw. I'm like, I have a mouth. I don't need a straw. And like emphasizing like, hey, can I have 4 margaritas? No straws, please. And actually, I'm kind of a dick when it comes to this because so many times they bring you straws anyway, and I'm pointedly like, take it out. And sometimes they ask me like, oh, why didn't you? And I'm like, because it's plastic. I don't need it. Like, um, buying secondhand. Like, I think fashion is one of the worst culprits. So many things are made of plastic, spandex, polyester, nylon, all these things are plastic. And every time we put them in the laundry, they're shedding microplastics into our water system. Same with beauty products. So many have got plastic microbeads in them, which again are going straight into our water system. So it's choosing not, it's researching what you're getting and not just choosing the easiest option. And oh my goodness, I don't want to sound like I'm a saint because I often choose the easiest option, right? We all do. Like I have kids and I have a husband, and sometimes they really care and sometimes they do not give a shit. I have to like, Amazon parcels arriving at the door. I'm like, oh, what
Mm-hmm.
now? But sometimes you're tired and you're in a rush and you want a party to be really fun or whatever, so you get the plastic thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think if we could all be, 20% better, 50% better, then
Mm-hmm.
that would be awesome. And like here's something that I've got. Okay, so we wear makeup, right? And sunscreen.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this one which I freaking love. I don't even sell it at Nude Foods, so I shouldn't really be promoting it. But it's glass. The lid's plastic,
I love that.
glass. And so then I can recycle it and it's just plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of taking steps to do the best that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's impossible to be perfect in this world unless you went and lived in a hut in the woods and grew your own food. Um,
Yep.
I mean, I do have some kind of extreme things, which a friend of mine created this company called Pea Cloths for women. And it's
Okay.
basically reusable toilet paper, only for
Okay.
number ones. Um, but it's actually kind of awesome and it's really pretty. And, you know, urine is sterile, so you just use it and you have a little bag and then I wash it and that saves a lot of paper. I'm trying to think of other kind of easy things. My biggest pet peeve is people bagging their produce at the grocery store in plastic bags. I'm like,
Yep.
don't, why are
Why?
you doing that? Even
It came out
bananas
of the ground. Did you
and
know that?
avocado and things. I'm like, what? What? And I've asked people before. I once pretended I was doing a survey just so I could ask them without being rude. I was like, oh, I'm wondering. I'm trying to learn. We're doing a survey on bags. Why do you bag your groceries? And someone's like, so that it's easier for the checkout people. I'm like, they know the difference between a banana and an avocado. They don't need you to separate them. I mean, and one time I didn't have any bags and I actually filled my pockets with green beans. And then I got to the checkout and I emptied my pockets and they weighed them and then I put them back in my pockets and left. And you can be really creative. If I
Mm-hmm.
ever go to a mainstream store, which sometimes I do, and I actually, they're really fun. The packaging is a great sales tool. I'm like, oh, I want to try that and that and that. But if I do, and I don't have any kind of reusable bag, I just put it all back in my car, walk to my car, and then just put it all in my car without a bag. I don't need a bag. And then when I get home, I go get a bag and unpack it that way. So it's just I mean, I don't really have the embarrassment gene, so I'm always happy to be like really out there and just do the weird thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just about not always doing the normal thing and just choosing something a little bit different. It's about saying no and just being like, actually, you know what? I'm not gonna just accept that as the way it's done. I'm gonna do it a bit
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
And
I
you,
think
and
that
also
is,
just to add one last bit to that, you'll be amazed at how much your leading by example affects other people. Like my parents' friends even say to them, when I'm at the store, I like have Verity's voice in my head about plastic. And I've never really said it, I haven't said anything specific to them, but they see that and then people become aware, like, oh my goodness, so if I'm using this plastic here, then where else am I using plastic? And the awareness like grows and grows. So by taking like a stand and being a little vocal without being judgy or whatever else, you can have a good effect.
yeah. I also think that being unapologetically, or as you said, unembarrassingly,
Yeah.
like that honestly is such a power move that other people are like, oh wow, maybe I should be doing
Yeah,
that.
maybe.
Because I think that it's also so important for you to look at what you're buying of like, oh yeah, let me look and see what is in this or what in terms of when I started secondhand shopping recently, I realized like how much polyester was in my clothes. So I look at every label while I am secondhand shopping, which seems so excessive. But at the end of the day, I have all cotton clothing. I have all linen, all silk, like 100%, and it lasts longer. It feels nicer, and to me, that is something that I'm willing to do, that I'm willing to accept, in that it feels so crazy, but I don't fill my shopping cart with so many things that I don't need, that I want to return, that I can't because I bought it secondhand, that I end up recycling back to whatever secondhand place that I bought it from. And it ends up being such a practice of intentionality. And that, I think, is what our current society is missing, is intentionality. It is so much so a commendable effort to have convenience. It is so much so, I want Amazon 1 day shipping. I want this the next day. Okay, take a step back. What values do you have? What do you want to place a focus on? Because how I started framing my ideology is also your dollars are your vote of who are you voting for? What are you voting for? And do I want to vote for Jeff Bezos? Do I want to vote for Elon Musk? Because ultimately, when you think about zero waste and you think about all of the things that you're doing, you're biking, you're bringing your own Tupperware, you are doing so much. And the fact that Jeff Bezos, Taylor Swift is taking a private jet that erases all of the emissions. Like, I think I read a statistic somewhere that the average billionaire's emissions in 1 day equates to more than the average person's of their entire lifetime. And that statistic may or may not be made up. I don't know, but it's something to think about, something to take into consideration of you are doing all of this. And that is the question when I have people come over to my house, specifically my dad and brothers. Why is your shampoo a bar? Why is your paper towels? Why are they on a roll that you like rewrap? And I'm like, because this is what I can do. And they're like, well, what about China? What about Jeff Bezos? I'm like, and what about them? Like, what can I do besides not shop what they are producing, not vote for them with my dollars, and do the things that I think are sustainable? So my question to you is then, what is your answer to that? Like when you pull your straw out of your drink at the restaurant and they're like, well, it's already produced, we already made it, like obviously I've heard that response as well, but like, how do you negate that? How are you like, okay, shut up and shove it?
How do I negate that? I tend to just educate them and say, I don't want to drink through plastic because microplastics come off it. And, we're consuming over 200,000 microplastic particles. Each one of us is doing that every year. We're breathing it, we're drinking it, we're eating it. It's freaking everywhere. It's in our brains, it's causing disease. They're linking it to cancer and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all these dreadful things. And so first of all, I would explain it's actually better for my health not to drink through a plastic straw. But I always just say, like you said, I do what I can, and by being a little vocal and public about it, it does make people reconsider. It's funny, like my husband sometimes like really kicks back on my desire to be so plastic free. And then I'll hear him at a party or to his family or whatever, like expounding how important it is and stuff. And I'm like, yes, I got through to you.
So it is working. It
Yeah,
is
it is
working.
good. It's not always convenient when I tell him he's got to do something another way. He's like, no, I will pick up that Whole Foods paper bag, even though I don't have to. But yeah, I mean, and that is a really great example of convenience being king, right? I own a grocery store where I get everything for 50% off because I own a store. And he will shop at Whole Foods because it's 2 minutes from our house. And my store is 13 minutes from our house. I mean, mostly I do 95% of the shopping and bring stuff home. But if he wants something, he is going to just grab it right from there. And that's just a prime example that even though he gets it 50% off, he still won't drive an extra 10 minutes.
Yep. Yep. And I think that is just ultimately like what America has become of
Right.
just, yep, it's convenient. That's what I'm going to do. But I think that also really personifies like the obstacles that we face in society of, okay, this isn't easy. There are obstacles. This is kind of hard. And Verity, am doing so much. Like, there's obviously not everything as you're describing as easy as it seems. It's not easy starting a grocery store. It's not easy maintaining a grocery store. It's not easy trying to be sustainable all the time. What are those obstacles that you face, not only in your personal life, but also with owning a grocery store?
I mean, the main obstacles in my personal life are children because they freaking love plastic shit. They love it.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
toys and I mean, they beg me to be able to go to the normal grocery store with all the packaging because they want to be like their friends. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, my mum used to make homemade fresh bread with like caraway seeds. I mean, it was amazing. We'd make it together, and I would beg, why can't we have sliced white bread like everyone else? And I'm like, wow, I really had the wrong values back then. The kids just want to fit in and be like everyone else. So that's hard. People also really like what they like. So there's certain brands that people just can't live without. And so I've got great friends who shop at Nude Foods, but they have to go to Trader Joe's for XYZ. People are obsessed with Trader Joe's. I don't know why.
I don't get it either.
They
I am
go
not
in
from
there
a
and I'm
Trader
just like,
Joe's.
I don't get it. But
Yeah.
obstacles and then challenges around what we're doing at Nude Foods. I mean, we're very lucky in our founding team. We had very different skill sets and personality types, but all entrepreneurs, and all of us kind of don't take a second thought about it being difficult. We're just kind of, we solve the problem and we improve it and we move on to the next thing. And failure is not an option. It's really, we love this. This is our baby. We love it so much, and
Yeah.
we're gonna, and our customers love it so much. Like we have hundreds of 5-star reviews. I think we have one 3-star review. Everything else is 5-star reviews.
And do you know what the 3-star review says? Do you have it memorized?
Actually, we did have another one, and I'm quite adept at persuading people to change their minds. I think we've had 3 kind of sub 5-star in total in the whole lifetime of the business, and I've
That's
actually like
impressive.
tracked the people down and been like, hey, tell me more. Like, let me. And I mean, one of them was because apparently we didn't call this guy back, and I'm like, we're insanely busy. Like we didn't need another produce supply. It
I'm
was again the
sorry.
wrong thing. And then another one, our delivery thing is a bit clunky, and someone was complaining about that. It can be clunky, but the great news is we are currently transitioning to a whole new website, and it's going to be amazing and seamless. And we're on Instacart too, so that problem is solved. And what was the other? Oh, and another person was just like, "This isn't really my thing," and I was like, "Well, you don't need to negatively review us for that."
That reminds me, I saw this
My thing.
meme of someone posting about a hospital review, and it was like rating the specific doctor, and it was a 5-star review of the doctor, but they only got 4 out of 5 stars, and they said, "I love this doctor, highly recommend him, he saved my life." 4 out of 5 stars. And the guy was like, "Well, what do I have to do to get the 5th star? Like, I quite literally saved your life. What
That's
more? What more?"
hilarious. Yeah, right. And actually, interestingly, we get held to a higher standard. So there's a vegan restaurant, a vegetarian restaurant in Boulder called Leaf. And they are mostly vegan, but they have some eggs from their own local farm. And I used to be full vegan. Now I would say I'm 99% vegan because I know where the eggs have come from at Nude Foods. I'll occasionally have something which doesn't. I'm just a little less strict than I was. But this kind of vegan protest group went and protested at this restaurant. And I was like, what the are you doing? This is the most vegan restaurant that exists anywhere near us, and you are choosing to protest them because they have some locally raised eggs. Go protest the steakhouse, right? I mean,
like, are you not on the same team? I'm confused.
Right? And this is what I think happens sometimes with us. People are like, why aren't you perfect? And we're like, we are doing our absolute best.
Hey guys, guess what? We're human.
We're human. We are human. And we're 80% better than any other grocery store around. But there is this funny thing of where you kind of step out on a values piece. People become very dogmatic about any deviation from that.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I remember Greta Thunberg, who was like non-debatably one of the most sustainable focused, that is what her life's purpose is, getting backlash for wearing a shirt or something that had like something printed, screen printed on it. And they're like, there's microplastics on it. There's microplastics. And she's like, what? Like literally just won like Times Person of the Year for sustainability. English is not her first language, but has spoken to the UN in English about what like, people are just held to, especially in the realm of do-gooders.
Yes.
Like people that want to do good, that are trying to do good, they're held to this unrealistic, crazy standard of if you're not perfect, you're not doing enough. And then that like allows people to deteriorate and like, well, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't easy. It's not convenient. Maybe I should just stop. Maybe they're right. Maybe if I can't be 100%, why try it all?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we've really got to focus on, is not letting perfect get in the way of good. And that's what we really want to do. You know, that's what we do at Nude Foods. We welcome everyone. You can buy 90% of your food at King Soopers and 10% with us. Anything is great. Anything you're doing is making a difference. Anything. And so, yeah, I would hate anyone to ever be afraid to come to Nude Foods because they felt like, I don't know, we would judge them on anything. We would never do that.
Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of moral superiority that people feel is imposed upon them when they are around other people like that. Like I have felt like that in a Pilates class full of middle-aged women, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here because I can't finish these workout with these women. Like they are badasses. They're able to actually do the whole thing, and I have to sit out for a second and take a breather. And it becomes this environment of like, shoot, do I belong here? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And I feel like yes, because if I were to go to any of those women, they wouldn't have been, oh, yep, we saw you. We were watching you. We were watching you sit out. It's all this like self-doubt and fear of being perceived a specific way of, well, if you're not doing 100%, and I feel like that relies so heavily on, well, why would I do this? Because China is the #1 polluter and they're not doing anything. I'm sick of that narrative. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, we have to do... Yeah, I mean, of course, I think we can often feel like we're fighting a losing battle. But we got to keep fighting, because if we don't, then I think we're letting a part of ourselves go and completely compromising our values.
Yep.
Because things do change, right? We used to have leaded petrol, as I would call it, gas. And now we
Yep.
have unleaded, which is better. We used to not have electric cars, and of course there are issues with batteries, but electric cars at least are not polluting the earth so much. I mean, there's a really scary book you should read, but it's fascinating. It's called The End of the World is Just the Beginning.
Oh boy. Okay.
It's kind of about deglobalization and how we're kind of screwed when we go back to the Dark Ages. But it's very interesting, and it does show you how nothing is all good generally. Like there's trade-offs everywhere, and you just have to work out what you care about the most.
Yes.
So for me, it's waste and animals, right? Because I don't want, and the cognitive, we can get onto like veganism and the incredible cognitive dissonance around eating animals and animal products. Like, we're an animal loving nation. We all have dogs and stuff, and then we murder other animals. It's like speciesism, I think they call it. If anyone actually saw what went on in an abattoir, no one would freaking eat meat again. But there's this, but I like it vibe. I like it. And it comes, it changes from a cow to beef, from a pig to bacon, and it kind of de-animalizes it. But that's a really clear case, I always think, of kind of something not quite lining up with people's values and,
Yes.
the actions they take.
Yeah. And I feel like with so much happening in the world, now is the time to assert what your values are, of what you care about, what you want to practice. And so if someone listening to this episode was trying to figure out, okay, I want to be a better version of myself to make a positive impact on this world so that I can leave it better than I came into it. What is something that you would recommend in terms of, hey, maybe consider this or consider this or consider this? What would you want them to take away from zero waste, from veganism, from this entire episode?
I mean, the biggest impact you could probably have is to stop eating animal products, because that's environmentally hugely harmful and not good for your health. Check out the China study. Like, if you eat plants, you're way less likely to get cancer than if you eat meat. Also, that dairy is actually, I would choose to eat meat over dairy if I had a choice, because I think dairy animals are worse treated than meat animals, depending on where they're being farmed, right? So yeah, I mean that's too big a change for some people. So give up meat 2 days a week, 3 days a week. My husband has a vegan lunch every day, and a vegan breakfast. And he does now, he used to eat all vegan because I did all the cooking, and he's now finally been like, no, I want some meat. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I buy the most sustainably raised meat that I can find from Nude Foods. And we have that. He has that. I don't. And then in terms of like waste, I think it's, if you don't have a Nude Foods near you, then when you go to the grocery store, choose things in glass or in cardboard or in metal of some kind that is infinitely recyclable, rather than plastic, which is only recyclable a few times. Take stands, like send your trash back to the producer and be like, you deal with this. Write to producers and explain how much you hate what you love their product, but you hate the packaging. The louder we are, the more difference we can make.
I love that. And I feel like I forget sometimes, like, oh shit, maybe I should write a letter. Maybe I should say something. Because like so often the times we just accept that this is just how it is. Oh, this is what we have to do. But I think that the acts of rebellion are definitely something that we should take into consideration, and that are normal and should honestly be promoted, because why should I deal with the plastic waste from your product that you sold to me? Why should I? Why should that become a part of my trash bill? It shouldn't. Why should it be part of our landfill? It shouldn't. But overall, absolutely loved having you on, loved chatting with you, and would love to have you plug where you can find Nude Foods, what apps you can find it
Yes.
on, how you can take part.
Great.
So please.
So we have Nude Foods in stores in Boulder and Denver. Boulder is at 32nd and Walnut. Denver is at 44th and Lowell. So kind of Highlands, Berkeley area near Tennyson Street. You can order online at nudefoodsmarket.com, and we deliver a lot around Denver and Boulder area and the corridor in between. You can also order on Instacart. It's a slightly more complex system because of the jar returns. But we will be launching some things that actually can be sent nationwide soon, like zero waste kits and things like that. But that will be with the new website coming up soon, and some swag. I'm currently working on sustainable swag. So I'm testing out this little kind of patch here, which is made completely of recycled water bottles.
I love that.
So
that's awesome.
finding sustainable alternatives. And I didn't really actually explain how Nude Foods works, so I'm going to just add that, because
go ahead.
Everything's packaged in these reusable, returnable jars. Not everything, nearly everything is packaged in those. And so the only difference between a traditional store and our store is that instead of putting your food packaging into the landfill when you're done with it, you bring it back to us. And that's literally the only difference. And your pantry looks beautiful because it's full of glass jars rather than horrible plastic packets. Your food is not as contaminated by all the microplastics, and your trash can will only have to be taken out very rarely, because most of your trash is food packaging. Generally,
it's true. And I recently stopped shopping at Costco altogether because I was like, I can't do this anymore, because it was like every week the egg cartons would fill up the majority of my bin. And I'm like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this?
Yeah.
Terrifying.
No, we have reusable egg cartons, so you should bring them on back to us.
I love it. And let's make this the norm.
Right?
Let's make this what everyone wants to do, what everyone wants to see. And when you walk into someone's house, that's what you expect to see.
Exactly.
I love it. And Verity, thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
So fun.
I will definitely be stopping by a Nude Foods soon.
Right.
I absolutely love what you're doing. I think that you're doing such an amazing, wonderful thing for not only the community of Denver, but the earth as a whole.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Consider the Source podcast. If you're not already, please make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to check us out on YouTube, because the videos do get posted there every Wednesday. And then if you haven't already, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. Make sure that you're following me on social media at Sarah Smiles Network everywhere. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and make sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Consider the Source podcast. Bye.